أهلا وسهلا فيكم بجسور الإرسالية.
Welcome to Bridges for Mission.
歡迎聆聽宣教橋梁。
Bienvenido al Puente a Misión.
Welcome to Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenue au Pont pour la Mission.
ยินดีต้อนรับสู่สะพานพันธกิจของพระเจ้า
Hello, everyone. You are been dedicated followers and listeners of Bridges for Mission. I am Reverend Sandra Dorsonville, one of the co-founders of this podcast. And I want to acknowledge that this podcast has been started in 2020. And God has really enabled us to crisscross the world, touch many of you in various countries, and we thank you. We thank you for your dedicated commitment to following us, following the episodes that we've had. So thank you for being part of Bridges for Mission. This is a new season, and our guests that we will have this season will share what partnership means for them and how cross-cultural mission has evolved in their faith journey. And of course, they will share the impact that short-term mission has had. So listeners, come on and listen to today's guest. Today's guest is Gabby Perez. And Gabby, it is a delight to have you share a few minutes with Bridges for Mission.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, of course, of course. Can you share with our listeners a bit about yourself and how you would define the word partnership?
Sure. Yes, so I work at an elementary school in my state, Colorado, and I've been working in education for, I'm starting my 8th year in education, and I have been on a handful of short-term trips, mission trips, and started going in high school, kind of maybe on what a typical United States high school mission trip kind of was. And that's when I've just felt a really big call on my heart to work with people, specifically children. And I especially loved the cross-cultural and international aspects of that work. So it still is part of my life in my education role. I intentionally work in a building with a lot of different cultures involved because I just, again, feel like God put that on my heart and I love it. So a little bit about myself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So what does the word partnership mean for you?
So for me, it means people in my life that are connected to, I guess, my journey and me and my husband's journey together. And they're people who are following me through that journey, if that makes sense. So people, and actually, it can be people who come in at, in short moments, but the partnerships that I thought about when I was thinking about what to share today have been people who've been with me or for quite a few years and like involved in my life or made a big impact that have shifted life choices.
Wonderful. And we crossed paths at the Hear the Call retreat at Green Lake, Wisconsin. And the journey, can you share a little bit what the impact that weekend has been, that retreat has been for you and since then?
Sure. Yeah, so that was a huge impactful moment in my life and my husband's life. We were still fairly newly married at that time. And again, it was like mission work or cross-cultural work has been something that I've felt God put on my heart for a long time. It's not something that I think my husband would say was like a call that he had felt, and so he wanted to learn more and support me too. And so some of our church partners at our church, they knew my story and they knew my calling, and they were very generous in supporting me and then wanting to support my husband too, and sent us to hear the call. So we could learn together as a couple. And so it was, like I said, a very impactful weekend for us, or week, especially for us together as a couple and trying to figure out like what is God calling us to. And so for us, it wasn't a call to immediately step on and start the process of becoming missionaries, right in that week. However, we did hear some clear callings and what to do for our next steps together. And so I think, again, like those partnerships, people we met, you, for example, some of the missionaries there, and just, again, the people at our church that continue to speak to us, like we just got so much encouragement about like not giving up on what, for me specifically, not knowing exactly what that call on my heart means. And so to not give up in continuing to seek God's call on my life, and for both of us to keep taking steps forward. A lot of wisdom was shared with us, especially in that week, and from some of the missionaries that we met, just speaking to like the reality of life as a missionary, and then how do you actually make that transition, or what does it look like stepping into that, for example, like owning a home, or having children, all those kinds of things. Like and a big thing for my husband was that he didn't have a degree from a university at that point. And so hearing from the missionaries like how important that is in your work cross-culturally and internationally, is having a degree and some skill sets that are valuable and that can be used, throughout the world. And so that was a huge step for us because, again, we were newlyweds. We were still trying to figure out, like, get stable financially, all that stuff that comes with being married newly. And so we just decided, like, okay, he needs to go to school. And so, coming back, he quit the job that he was in. He got a job that he could work more at night, signed up for, applied for university, and really went after that. And so, for us, it was something we did together because, since he was studying and working still full time, I had to also support in a lot of ways through that as well. Yeah. And then just continuing over the years. And then also for me too, with education, I decided to get my master's degree after my husband finished his undergraduate degree. So I finished my master's degree. And again, I think that wisdom around education was really important for us, and making that choice to pursue degrees and learning. And also the partnerships really gave us connection to mission work and guidance and how to keep connected to that. I feel personally it's super easy to be distracted by everyday life and by what is just happening in front of you every single day. And so I know for me, at least, sometimes it's easy to lose focus on the longer journey of trying to understand God's call and working cross-culturally. And so having the connection to missionaries, we met at Hear the Call, having connections and partnerships with people, again, that at my church who have been with me the whole time, making connections at our current church in their mission in their mission community, like that's been extremely important too, because again, it's helping me stay focused, have reminders from people to continue to take steps and guiding me when I really don't know what the next step should be. And I think that that also has been a huge piece for me, is that I feel sometimes overwhelmed by current life and overwhelmed of what even is the next step. And so again, having partnerships of people who have seen the journey and can see sometimes better than me the potential, it helps me again guide me and in the next steps. And then another huge piece for me that happened specifically at Hear the Call, but continues to happen, is just a really big challenge from my partners to, and again, the missionaries then at Hear the Call, to challenge myself and my faith. And because mission work and cross-cultural work is not easy, it has so many challenges. And so like really reflecting on, is my faith in a ready? Like, do I need to spend time maybe more growing myself in my faith too as I continue? And so I think since Hear the Call as well, I've really tried to do a self-reflection and take intentional steps to push myself in my faith. And, you know, had some challenges in finding a good church community through some years of our early marriage, and you know, just trying to figure all that out. And so it has, again, the partnerships, they've been so helpful in challenging me and pushing me to continue my faith journey as well, and to strengthen my faith, because again, like, cross-cultural work isn't easy, and you have to really depend on God in different ways sometimes than how we depend on God in the American daily life.
No, that's great. You've given the listeners really that it's not a straight line when we hear the word partnership, and how it truly is individualized, and but relationship is truly undergirds that. I wonder what advice you would give to the listeners who are contemplating going on short-term mission trips. What's important for them as they prepare themselves?
Yeah, well, I think huge piece for me is just getting connected to people at your church that are involved in mission work and cross-cultural work and have a passion for it, because that's what's kept me going and kept me connected again. And also to like find those people who will stick with you, who like see the potential, who believe in what God's doing in your life, and who will continue through that journey with you, because it's easy sometimes to get lost in your journey. And so again, I think a huge piece for me is like having this group of people who I know, no matter what I'm doing, whatever trip might, I feel like maybe is an opportunity, I can go to them and say like, I'm thinking about this, and they can give me honest ideas. Or, looking for the financial support can be something that's awkward, at least for me. I still feel awkward in asking for financial support, but I know with this group of people in my life who are my partners, like no matter what, if I say like, I want to try this opportunity out, and I feel like God's putting it on my heart, they're going to trust me in that, and they're willing. Like, it's not awkward, I guess. I'm trying to say with them.
Well, and I think you also speak of the trust that has been developed, and that's really foundational, and staying God-centered, which is so crucial along that journey. So no, well, Gabby, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing of your heart, sharing what partnership means to you, and how the journey has been for you and continues to be. So thank you. So in closing today's conversation, listeners, I am reminded of a favorite professor of mine, Dr. Michael Himes, and the 3 questions that he was known for. In class, he would often ask us, what are you good at? What do you love to do? What does the world need? And in light of our theme of partnership, I want to add, how can you be in partnership with where God's light shine a bit brighter? So thank you for listening. Until next time.
Bienvenue au Pont pour la Mission.
Welcome to Bridges for Mission.
Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a Puentes para la Misión.
Tu lo mu banasu do se de pa le da ta ku so go.
ยินดีต้อนรับสู่สะพานพันธกิจของพระเจ้า
Good morning, Bridges for Mission listeners. We are so delighted that you've joined us today. We have a new episode and a new guest as well. And her name is Sharon Yu. You will hear a little bit more about her and conversations that we'll have this morning. As you know, this is a new episode where we look at the different sides of partnerships, but really the gems that come through those partnerships and the different layers that the partnerships come as we serve and as we embrace short-term mission and have you really invite you to the table of short-term mission and how it impacts your life, how it impacts our life, and cross-culturally, how is God calling us to continue to do kingdom building. So we're delighted that you've joined us from all over, and thank you again for following us, and welcome to this new episode. So let's just get started. Sharon, welcome to the Bridges for Mission podcast.
Thank you.
Can you tell our listener a little bit about yourself, what you feel comfortable saying?
So my name is Sharon Yu. I'm currently a sophomore in college, and I'm majoring in psychology and pre-law, and I'm minoring in Chinese. And so right now it's midterm season, so I've been very busy.
Wow. Well, thank you for taking a little bit of time with us today and wanting to share a little bit more about how you got involved in mission and in ministry, if you don't mind sharing that with our listeners.
So my dad's also a pastor, so you could say I've been connected with God. I've known God all my life, even from my mom's womb. And I think one of the biggest ministries I take part in is my church, a local ministry. And I take part in the children's ministry and youth ministry. And since I was 13 or 14 in middle school, I've been the church leader for the youth. And I've also done short-term mission trips to Asia as well. But I think my church ministry has really made the person I am today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And one of the things that I omitted to say is that the 2 voices that listeners will hear, myself, Reverend Sandra Dorsenville, and then also Nicole Cox, we are both co-creators of this podcast, and it's been 3 years. So I'm turning it over to Nicole to ask you a few more questions. So thank you, Sharon, for your involvement and saying yes to God and seeing how that unfolds through children's ministry and and also serving on mission trips. So thank you. So Nicole, she's yours.
Thank you. I can't believe it's already been 3 years, all the wonderful podcasts that we've had, and they just continue to come, like the one today. Sharon, it's so good to be with you, and I'm so excited that we're having a chat. So my first question to you is, how do you envision the ministries that you are taking part in growing? Because you're not majoring in ministry, but it is a very large part of your life, a couple of different types of ministry. So how do you see that growing and being intertwined with each other?
Well, first of all, as I said before, I'm a college student. So as it's hard to juggle with my studies and my ministries, every time I go back home, I try to stay involved in church, stay involved with my church community and also the kids. And I know we live in a world right now where a lot of people my age and the younger generation are really falling and not having that connection with God. And so I think to grow this ministry, I'm really trying every time I go back to explain to the kids how much God's love is for us, even though it's hard to believe because they're children. You don't expect them to believe God is there, but I really try to emphasize how important God is. And even that little connection we have in God is so important to them. And as they grow older, I hope they will see what I got to see from all the people in my church and those who have I grown with.
That's wonderful. I understand that struggle working with youth ministry as well, and being an ex-youth pastor. It's hard to really encourage them and help them understand that this quote unquote invisible figure is their rock. For them, that's such a hard concept at times. So it's a beautiful ministry that you're doing, working with them to encourage them and helping them see how God is playing through your life. I think living the example is just as important as teaching and sharing. So kudos to you for that, and continue on that path. I would like to also, how do you see your mission trips possibly growing? Do you see that being something that you're going to continue to do?
I think I definitely would like to continue this. And one of my biggest goals is when we do short-term mission is to really get my age group, the college students and youth really engaged in these mission trips. Because I really think it's important to show people my age and the younger generation how God works in different ways. You know, you may see one perspective when you live in your own town, but when you go to a different place, a different country, it really opens the eyes and you can see how God works in so many of his wondrous ways. And I think it's really important that maybe if I keep this mission going, and this is just a small part, and many people do this, but it'll really help other people as well and my peers.
Wonderful. So you keep mentioning age and that you are still in college yourself. So I would like to ask you, which may be a loaded question, but what are some of the pros and the cons of being a leader at your age? There's a lot to unpack when it comes to young leaders in ministry, young leaders in the mission field. But from your perspective, what are some of those pros and cons being your age and serving the way you are serving?
Yes, I agree with you. There's so many things to talk about, the pros and cons of being a leader at such a young age. But I think I'll start with the pros. And I think one of it is there's so much for me to learn from. I think working with other people really helps me to see other perspectives that I probably wouldn't have seen if I didn't work with these people. And another thing is just being able to speak out my voice to other people, to different age groups. And I really thank the people around me and the adults around me and my mentors for really listening to me. I think one of the reasons why I'm able to become such a young leader at a young age is because the people around me surround me with their love, their support. And I think having those role models, those people around you is a big pro to really helping leaders to grow at such a young age. And then we think of cons. I think one of the biggest things is being at such a young age, you're scared of what to think and you're scared to really take a step forward. And so I really think the pros and cons, they come together. The pros wrap around the cons. And it's like they're really a path. You can't say, oh, there's just pros and there's just cons. Because in my opinion, I think they go two and two together. They're always together.
I love that imagery that they're intertwined. One of the, I guess, the quotes or things that I usually say is the two sides of the same coin. So you can't have one without the other, because they are connected in that way. And I would agree with you that I would say the pros and cons of being a young leader go hand in hand. Because if it was all cons, no, we wouldn't do it. It would be overwhelming and we would give up. But if it was all good all the time, then at the same time, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not experiencing difficulties and struggles to walk through to stretch you and grow you. So I love that imagery that they are intertwined together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that imagery as well. I was just visualizing it as well. And how both really stretch us. And I would say that's something that even adults and seasoned leaders can really embrace. So thank you for imparting that nugget. Again, those gems and part of the partnerships. As the last question that we have for you this morning, today, is how, if you could impart one piece of advice to our listeners, whether they be young listeners or seasoned listeners, keep in mind that, you know, the episode is really heard all over the world, from countries in Africa, countries in Asia, countries in Europe, and all. So if there's one piece of advice that you could impart to young leaders like yourself, what would that be?
I think it's just being excellent in the way you are and really trusting God. I think nowadays it's really hard to maybe trust God. And I think I've learned through my experiences that there's a thing called God's timing. You know, you can't just say, oh, maybe God will do this, maybe God will do that. I feel like God has his perfect timing. And the one thing we could do is really trust him, communicate with him through prayer, singing. There's so many ways you can do that. But by just believing and just keeping good at what you're doing will really help you focus. And I hope the listeners will think that as well.
Thank you so much, Sharon. So listeners, you heard the word trust. You heard the imagery that Sharon has provided of the, like Nicole said, the two sides of a coin, but the pros and cons, just embracing and intertwining with themselves. And so we thank you, listeners from Bridges for Mission, for following us, for coming to the table today and listening to what Sharon had to provide to us. What a beautiful gem. Until next time.